In 2023, China recorded two simultaneous historical record-breaking figures that left the whole world in awe and raised countless questions about the future of the planet's second-largest economy. First, the total length of newly built high-speed railways increased by 200 kilometers, meaning that on average this country inaugurated 3.5 kilometers of high-speed tracks every single day. But alongside that infrastructure miracle, the second figure is a haunting hidden iceberg. Local government debt has officially surpassed the 40 trillion yuan mark. This means that if we divide this number evenly, the average Chinese citizen is carrying a debt of about 30,000 yuan on their shoulders right from birth. These two facts do not actually contradict or negate each other. Rather, they are two sides of the same coin. Every smooth high-speed train you ride, every magnificent overpass you cross in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, behind them are loan contracts with astronomical figures. But the strange thing is that these debts have not crushed the economy as Western experts predicted. On the contrary, they have become the most essential fuel for the miraculous growth over the past 20 years. The most paradoxical and controversial point lies in the fact that this system makes the most calculating banks voluntarily pour money into heavily indebted local governments and forces the shrewdest real estate developers to line up to fight for plots of land that seem destined to make a loss. Is the city you are living in a real dragon rising or just a castle built on the sand of debt? Watch this video to the end to join me in decoding this magical operating machine, while also grasping 3 golden pieces of data that will help you know where it's worth betting your future. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the Raw Fact Teller channel so we can uncover the truths behind the dry numbers together. Have you ever wondered which group of people in China has the sharpest mindset and the strongest thirst for success, just like entrepreneurs? The answer will definitely surprise you. It is the local governments. Ever since a major financial reform, the central government has granted local authorities a special privilege known as fiscal decentralization. Simply put, this is a contracting mechanism. You go make money yourself, you get to keep most of the revenue for development, and you just need to hand over a certain percentage to the higher-ups. This design immediately triggered the predatory instincts and wolf-like spirit of local authorities. Look at Shenzhen or Suzhou to clearly see the extremity of this race. Shenzhen, in order to attract top tech conglomerates, did not hesitate to squeeze industrial land prices down to dirt-cheap levels, accompanied by a support package of free electricity, water, and infrastructure fees for 3 solid years. In Suzhou, officials did not sit around waiting for investors to knock on their doors. They formed dozens of investment promotion teams, flew all the way to developed countries, and conducted sweeping negotiations to snatch projects from international competitors like Singapore. Why did they have to risk their lives and work at an even higher intensity than startups like that? Because the official evaluation system is extremely harsh and focuses only on a few core indicators: GDP growth rate and tax revenue. A mayor in a 5-year term, if they fail to help the city's GDP achieve breakthrough growth or at least surpass their predecessor, will consider their promotion path closed or even face early retirement. Therefore, every spacious boulevard, every large-scale industrial park that you see is actually a chess piece in an ambitious game of political advancement. We often complain about soaring housing prices and blame the greed of landlords or real estate tycoons. But the truth is much deeper than that. Local governments sell land not just to get rich, but to survive. Going back in time to 1994, after the tax-sharing reform, the central government held the majority of value-added tax revenue, while local governments were left with only minor taxes. But there is a fatal contradiction here. All the burden of public spending, from building roads and schools, maintaining hospitals, to paying the payroll of the administrative apparatus, rests on the shoulders of the local government. When the pockets run dry but the pressure for development remains heavy, selling land becomes the greatest life preserver. In Hangzhou, there were times when income from selling land use rights accounted for over 60% of the city's total budget, meaning that for every $10 spent on public services, up to $6 came from land. This process operates like an extremely precise mechanical gear. The government reclaims land from farmers with low compensation prices, then pours capital into investing in infrastructure like electricity, roads, schools, and stations to turn barren land into golden land. Then the land price immediately skyrockets 10 times, or even dozens of times over. Not stopping there, the government uses these zoned lands as collateral to borrow billions of yuan from banks, then auctions them off to real estate developers at exorbitant prices. After buying the land, developers add construction costs and profits, and then push that price tag onto the shoulders of the home buyers, which is you. There is a startling figure that few people notice. About 40% of the money you spend buying an apartment is actually taxes and land use fees flowing directly into the local budget. This is not exploitation, but a closed-loop cash flow system where the government's debt today is the people's housing tomorrow. But this system has a flaw. It only operates as long as land can still be sold at high prices. And the day this money printer stops is approaching closer than we think. Why do even sparsely populated cities frantically build high-speed train stations? Why are places with insufficient passengers still determined to build multi-billion-dollar airports? The answer lies in a classic theory, the prisoner's dilemma. Put yourself in the shoes of a leader in Guiyang City, for instance. Right next door, Kunming City has just announced it will build the largest logistics center in the southwest region. At this point, you only have two choices. One is to stand still and observe. The other is to build an even bigger or more modern one yourself. If you don't build, capital flows and large enterprises will all flow to Kunming, your GDP will rank at the bottom, and your political career will end immediately. But if you build, even knowing for sure it will lose money in the short term, at least the GDP figure will still be recorded as growing and you will pass the evaluation. What is the result of this race? All 5 Southwest provinces own logistics centers, ranked in the top 10 nationwide, but the harsh truth is that their actual utilization rate is sometimes less than 30%. This is not due to the ignorance of planners, but the inevitable result of a game where people are forced to participate in competition. Even to win, local authorities start bleeding each other dry with excessive preferential policies. There are cities in the East that, to retain a chip factory, have committed to 10 years of tax exemption, given away free land, and provided billions of yuan in cash subsidies. That enterprise might win big, but who pays the bill for those incentives? It is the budget for education and healthcare of that city for the next 10 years. The cruel rule becomes starkly clear. The cities with the fastest GDP growth and the most glitz are often the places with the highest debt ratios. In this race, anyone who dares to hit the brakes will immediately be rear-ended by the car behind. Everyone has to floor the gas pedal, regardless of the financial abyss ahead. If you stroll around the city you live in and see a series of new overpasses, iconic buildings, or glittering convention centers, remember that behind them is an entity named local government financing vehicles. This is a concept that seems foreign to most citizens, but its influence seeps into every square meter of land you stand on. In essence, local governments are not allowed to directly borrow from banks for risky projects, so they establish these companies. These companies use land use rights and future tax revenues as collateral to borrow money for infrastructure. Look at Tianjin in 2015. The total debt from these financing vehicles exceeded 1 trillion yuan, a figure equivalent to the city's entire budget revenue for the next 10 years combined. Many people will ask, is this a multi-level marketing scam? The answer is more complex than that. Debt, when used correctly, is a great lever. The highways or overpasses have genuinely helped increase urban capacity, attracting residents and businesses, thereby creating new tax sources to pay off the debt. A prime example is the Second Ring Road in Wuhan. 10 years after its inauguration, surrounding land prices have increased 5-fold, and just the money from selling land in these areas was enough to pay off both the principal and interest, even leaving a large surplus for the budget. But debt is also a noose if it is thrown into useless monumental projects, multi-billion-dollar theaters just to host a few performances a year, or uninhabited ghost cities. The standard to judge whether an investment is right or wrong is actually very simple. Does that investment have the potential to generate enough cash flow or future tax revenue to cover the borrowed debt? Unfortunately, in the intoxication of promotion and the pressure of annual statistics, many operators have chosen to leave the debt for the next term, caring only that this year's GDP figures look absolutely brilliant. We have clearly understood the rules of this game, so how do we use it to guide the most important decisions of our lives? There are 3 core lessons I want to share with you. First, absolutely never go against the general trend. When a city is at the peak of selling land and massively building infrastructure, it is a signal of an expansion phase. Buying real estate at this time is usually the right decision because the infrastructure value will drive up the value of your asset as well. But when you see phenomena like land auctions starting to fail, and the government issuing documents requiring agencies to tighten their belts, that is when the land money printer is about to stop. Never rush in to take the fall or take over assets when the system's cash flow has dried up. Look at the lesson of Shenzhen in the 2015 period. After 2 years of declining land revenues, housing prices flatlined for 3 solid years, leaving those who rushed in at the peak trapped for an entire economic cycle. Second, choice is more important than effort. Your decision to dedicate yourself to a city with a debt-to-GDP ratio of over 300% compared to a place with an abundant budget will lead to 2 completely different outcomes for your family. In a heavily indebted place, for the next 10 years, the government will only focus on paying off debt. The budget for schools and healthcare will be squeezed. Meanwhile, in places with a healthy cash flow, the quality of public services will continuously improve. Third, learn to see through the motives behind every policy. When you hear messages about developing a new industry, don't just read the flowery words on paper. Look to see if the land has been zoned and if the actual cash flow has been poured in. If there are only flashy slogans, it's just pie in the sky. But if there are dedicated funds and land is ready, that is when the cash flow is truly placing its bets. Remember how Hangzhou nurtured Alibaba and the e-commerce industry with substantial tax exemption packages and preferential loans to create the miracle we see today? This economic system based on infrastructure and debt is not purely good or bad, it is an operating mechanism of a historical nature. It transformed a backward agricultural nation into the world's factory in just 4 decades, lifting over 700 million people out of poverty and building the most modern infrastructure network. But at the same time, it also created consequences such as skyrocketing housing prices and an imbalance in resource allocation. Every coin has 2 sides, and your position depends on which side you stand on to view it. True awareness is not spending all day criticizing or complaining about the system, but acknowledging its existence, decoding its operational logic, and from there, finding your own path. The people who truly transcend their era do not do so because they work many times harder than others, but because they see through the rules of the game earlier than everyone else. Understanding the system clearly is not so that you become a passive chess piece, but so that you become an active player, knowing where the traps are and where the potential value zones lie. When you elevate your perspective from minor individual hardships to the macro level of system operations, every question that once left you stuck will automatically find an answer. Those who are still lost out there, perhaps it is simply because they are too engrossed in using a microscope to scrutinize the trivialities right in front of them, forgetting to pick up a telescope to see the true face of the world. In your opinion, between a city with glittering modern infrastructure but heavy debt, and a city with an ordinary appearance but abundant finances, where would you choose to bet your future? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below so we can discuss and learn from each other. If you found this video providing a fresh and useful perspective, please hit the subscribe button to support the Raw Fact Teller and give us more motivation to produce the next high-quality content. Goodbye, and see you in the upcoming journeys of decoding the truth.